see. Yes, I think we are live. Happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. How are you all doing? Did you have a good long weekend? For those of you who do the Thanksgiving thing, for those of you in the US, I know not everybody celebrates, but for those of you who do, I hope you had a beautiful weekend. We had a meal. We went out to a really lovely restaurant at a Prefix. My husband and I, we live in New York City. For those of you who don't know me, we did not cook. We often spend Thanksgiving with my stepson and his mom and bonus dad and extended family, but they were in New Jersey this year, so we did the Prefix dinner thing out and had a lovely time. Caught a couple of good movies. I think we saw two movies this weekend. Lots of good walks, lots of good food, all the good fun. I'm also really happy to be back here as we're heading into December. This is kind of my favorite time of year. So looking forward. It's sweater weather to hang with that. You can expect to see me in lots of oversized sweaters. It's like my favorite thing this time of year. I also, yes, for those of you, if you follow me on Instagram now, cut bangs over the break, and I'm not sure how I feel about them yet. I'm very open to your vote. I'm still learning how to do the styling thing with them. I'm not a big I can like get ready in like 5 minutes and usually use this hair wrap thing that I bought online where I let my hair kind of like air dry around it and like don't wash it for like 3 or 4 days at a time, which is why sometimes it looks more done up on our lives than other. So the whole like rude awakening of having to style bangs has been a funny thing, and to be continued. That's what's going on in my world. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about scaling. I'm going to pull up this live stream to make sure I can see all of your comments, because sometimes I can see them and sometimes I can't. And Facebook and I just get along that way. But we're talking scaling today, and particularly around three specific problems, in air quotes, problems to solve for to scale. And this is an important conversation. It's a conversation I have a lot with clients, and I think scaling is something that just gets really confused in our space. I think understanding the problems to solve gets really confused. I think understanding what you need to focus on to successfully scale. There we go. I can see myself live, and I can see my friend. I look very 70s, y'all. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure how we feel about this. Anyway, way back to our topic. I think that it's just a confusing topic, and to again know what to focus on. And I want to preface that because whether or not you're growing to your first 10K month or six-figure year or wanting to scale past that, to normalize that, I work with really, really smart individuals. And when I'm speaking with clients who are at the multi-six figures or who are scaling to high multi-six, 700K years, $1 million plus years, these are smart business owners. They get business, and yet these are still the challenges that they need support that we need to work through. So I say that just again to normalize that. I think sometimes there's a story in our brains that when you get to a certain level, there will be challenges to overcome or opportunities for growth or things to work through. You won't need support. And I have yet to see that to be true. Both my own experience on the client side as a business owner. Gosh, I've been in business now, we're 7.5 years, and supporting clients on the coach side. So just to normalize that a little bit. If you're a client of mine, if you follow my work for any amount of time, I'm not a big fan of the word problems. So yes, I titled this Ready to Scale, Address These Three Problems. So that's why it's in air quotes. I think problems are often made up by our brain, often things we're often focused on the wrong problems. I think as soon as we think something's a problem, we address it very differently. I love to see problems more as opportunities. And a lot of times problems are not problems unless you label them so or fixate on them. So really what we're going to talk about today are the main opportunities to scale. And we're going to identify the three, I think for pretty much, obviously there is not a one size fits all formula. Everyone's business is different. But for the most part, I really see there to be three main opportunities, three main problems that I'm addressing with clients. And we want to talk about why it's important to identify which is your particular challenge or opportunity. And you might have all three at different times, so you know what to focus on to successfully scale. This is also true for you if you're growing. I'm speaking to scaling because this has been coming up for my clients who are scaling. But everything we're talking about today, if you're growing to your first six figures, this is all still really relevant. So don't hop off. As I'm going through this as well, please let me know if you have questions, thoughts, reflections, anything like that. I want this to be valuable for you. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the biggest problem I see. We're going to identify what those three core, in air quotes, problems or challenges are, so you can identify them, why they're important to understand. And one of the things I really want to dig into is one of the biggest challenges or opportunities, I should say, that I see that I think is not what we expect when it comes to scaling, and how this really has nothing to do with your messaging or your marketing or your sales or even your CEO mindset. I mean, a little your CEO mindset, but I would say this is probably the biggest conversation I'm having with most of my clients who are scaling. So we're going to unpack that a little bit, because I think if you understand that, it will help change the game for you so much, both as you're growing and as you're scaling your business. I realized we did not do a giveaway today, which is funny. We always have a giveaway if you join live. However, we did have a Thanksgiving giveaway in the group. It was a small token of my gratitude. We could have done one $100 gift card, but we broke it up into five $20 gift cards. So it is pinned to the top of the group. We technically closed it yesterday, but my team still needs to go in today to pick winners. So if you see this, we can extend that through the end of the day, since I didn't pick a giveaway for today. Stay with me live. If you leave a comment in here, we'll add your name to that giveaway, and then we will pick those five winners for the five different $20 gift cards or cash money that we'll send you. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 things to focus on to scale. So I think the first thing, like just what we're talking about here at the beginning, to understand, I really see one of the biggest real problems, like maybe the only real problem that sabotages business growth and scalability, is looking for problems. And looking for problems, and what I mean by that, this is twofold. It's looking for problems and not understanding or knowing the right gap to close, to focus on the right opportunity for your growth, and then focusing on the wrong one of these 3 that we're going to talk about. So this is almost like 3 prongs. So I'll explain what I mean by that, and then I'll break down what those 3 opportunities are a little bit more. But what I mean by this is, we've talked about this in this group before. And I think it's worth repeating, because if you are a client of mine, you know one of the most annoying things about me is so often I will challenge you to see if the problem you bring to the table is in fact the real problem that needs to be addressed. And the reason for this is I've just seen, it's not because I like to be a contrarian with my clients, or that I don't believe my clients. It's more that I don't believe their brains all of the time, because I know my job as their coach is to be the neutral mirror, the neutral person who can reflect to them what I'm hearing. And I also know brains are wired, all of our brains, your brain, my brain, this has like nothing to do with like how high vibe you are or not. Our brains are just wired for survival, not for success. And they're wired to seek pleasure, to avoid pain, right? And for survival. And part of the survival mechanism in all of our brains is we are always scanning our horizons for challenges, for threats, for problems, so that we can notice them and solve them to keep ourselves safe. But we do that as a way to keep ourselves safe, again, not as a way to create success, right? Those are keeping yourself safe and creating success are almost like 2 diametrically opposed. If we think of a scale, they're on like opposite ends here. Obviously, we want you to be safe when you're creating success, but through the lens of your brain and what it's looking for, when it's looking for problems, it's not thinking about what is the right problem in your business? What's the right gap to close so you can have more success? It's looking for what is the threat that could harm us and take us out of our homeostasis, that can take us out of what currently feels safe, cozy, and familiar. Even if what's safe, cozy, and familiar isn't serving you, is safe, cozy, and familiar, but it's actually sort of toxic, or it's actually quite limited. Your brain doesn't really care, because it feels safe, cozy, and familiar. And anything outside of that, even something that could make you $1 gazillion, is going to seem like a threat. And so we want to know that about the brain, because that means your brain is constantly on a subconscious level scanning the threat, your horizon for threats. If you add in having any sort of trauma or having any sort of heightened experience going on, or if you are about to make a big up level, like scaling your business with a new offer or something like that, that is taking you out of what currently feels safe, familiar, comfortable, right? Your brain goes on hyper alert of what here could be a threat and is looking for that, which means your brain is going to like feel so proud of itself. It's like a little puppy dog looking for problems. It feels so good when it finds a problem, because it's like, I've got a problem to bring to you. I am like such a good dog. It's like going and playing fetch for problems. That is just what our brains do. And again, great for survival, not so great for success, and particularly not so great for scaling, because scaling is generally going to mean, what I hear when I think about scaling is your business is already, and this is the same for you if you're growing your business, but you're already in a place where things are probably pretty sustainable. They're probably chugging along. We're talking about how do we expand that without adding on more work or a ton of more hours, right? How do we bring in more revenue? But same for you if you're growing. If you're already pretty comfortable in your day-to-day life and we're asking you to step outside that comfort zone, of course, that's going to kick that response up in your brain. And so this is what I see more than anything sabotage, or not sabotage, but as a potential sabotage for my clients. And one of my big jobs is to really help them discern how many of the things that you're bringing to the table that you just want to chew on, that you just want to chase, that you're just like, this is the thing I really need to focus on, is really just your brain in that response, and how much of the things that you're bringing to the table are actually real opportunities or challenges. We call them problems too, but I see them as opportunities for you to lean into, for you to address, that are going to help propel you forward, to keep you in momentum, or to help you to grow or scale your business. And with that, what I often find is our brains are kind of like not the best at identifying what is actually the correct challenge to solve for, right? So it's great at identifying challenges, but it tends to identify something that isn't really what you actually need to be able to scale. So I think understanding that, because what we want to then be able to do is not just identify challenges or opportunities, but identify the right problem to solve, the right gap to close, the right opportunity for you in any stage of business, so that that's where you're putting your time, your focus, your energy, or that's where you're spending your team dollars, right? Because it is so easy to waste your own time, or to waste your own team's time, or to waste your money or your money on team spend, focusing on challenges, opportunities that seem real, but that aren't what you currently need to focus on to move forward, to scale your business. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's talk through what I see. And again, this is not, we're having a live stream here. This is not every business ever. This is not like every single opportunity ever to scale. These are just the 3 most common I really see. And I think, I would say for the majority of my clients, whether they're growing to their first 6 figures or we're scaling to multi 6, 7 figures, we're constantly cycling through, noticing which of these 3 challenges or problems are coming up for them and where the opportunity is to lean in. And usually once we've addressed or solved one, right, another one becomes a problem. It's not like once you solve one of these, it goes away forever. It's just sort of like, this is just the cycle in business. So I'm going to share what these are, and then I'll break them down and kind of what each one means. But what I see is capacity, leads, and conversions as the 3 main problems, gaps to close, opportunities. And of course, within this, there are strategy pieces, there's action pieces, there's mindset pieces. But in terms of like big picture, when you're looking at your business, whether you're going from 0 to 6 figures, or if you're at 6 figures and you're kind of coasting along and you want to double your revenue, say in 2024, and that's not happening right away, right? We're like, then these are probably one of the 3 things you want to look at and identify which is the first one for you to address. So when I say capacity, I'm just seeing here, I don't have a comment. When we're talking about capacity, I mean capacity in a couple of different ways, but I really would say, and this is the one I'm going to spend a little more time towards the end of the live stream on, because I think this is actually one of the most overlooked ones, and this is the one I'm having the most conversations with my clients around. And again, smart business owners, it's not like they don't get this. It's not like this is a concept they don't understand. I think capacity is just a very real challenge, because you have to think about when you're scaling your business. If you're ready to scale your business, usually what that means is your business is at capacity, right? If you have a one-on-one model, for example, and you want to scale it, you're probably not going to scale into group programs before your one-on-one is filled, right? Or you're not going to scale into courses before your one-on-one is filled, right? Usually scaling is the solution to a capacity problem, right? Otherwise, you're not scaling, you're adding more shit to your plate and you're diffracting your focus. And I would highly recommend you don't do that. That's not the conversation for today. And I know I'm not talking to every business owner individually, and there are exceptions to every rule, but that is the general thought I would say. And if you want to know more about that, I will drop the link to the last masterclass. We had the Path to Consistent 10K months, because we talked about that quite a bit, and creating a very clear offer suite and customer journey to reach those consistent 10K months. And I would say at that place, then you're ready to think about scaling. But that's sort of like step 1. But if you're making those consistent 10K months and they're reoccurring, if you're making 6 figures per year and that is really set and solid, right? If you're thinking about scaling is the solution to a capacity problem or opportunity, right? It usually means your offers are full and you can no longer, in air quotes, trade time for money, right? You have more humans than spots to fill to sell them into, and you're looking at how do I scale this upwards without adding on more time, more work, like without increasing my expenses, or like proportionally, how do I increase the revenue coming through the door? Hopefully that's tracking for everyone. So it makes sense that this is going to be one of the biggest challenges. So what I mean by this, so like just to break this up, that is one way in which I mean capacity. Capacity also, I think, it's not just capacity within your business and capacity within your offer. We could literally look at, are you full to capacity in terms of number of spots or seats you have for your one-on-one or for your group program or for your mastermind, right? I think we can think capacity in that. That way, I think capacity can also be your personal capacity. A lot of business owners who are ready to scale, the biggest challenge they also have to solve for is they're maxed out on their personal capacity and bandwidth in terms of there are no more hours in the day. There's no more energy left for them to expend. If they want to make more money, it can no longer be through sheer hard work, time, effort, or it could be a team capacity thing, right? Like the bottleneck that is keeping a business from scaling is that there's capacity in an offer. They have an offer that's limited capacity. They maybe as a CEO have the bandwidth, the capacity, they've gotten that, but their team is now not functioning at capacity. It's at capacity and it's not able to keep up with the demands. And so there is a need for solving for team capacity. Hopefully that makes sense. I will break this down a little bit more, but in terms of what I mean by capacity. So that's one of the problems to identify and solve for to scale. And again, I think scaling is in many ways a solution to this, but I'm going to come back to the capacity piece because I have a lot more to say on that. Leads. So leads, I think, is something that is absolutely a hurdle, a challenge, a problem, an opportunity, depending on how we want to think about it, for you as you're scaling. Oftentimes, if you are at capacity and you solve that by creating a new program to scale. So let's just say we're going traditional ascension models. This is not what I do, but some of my clients have done, right? You have a one-on-one model, you hit capacity, so you're going to scale. And your solution to that is to create a new program that opens up more capacity without you having to work more. So let's just say you create a mastermind program, right? Great. So you've solved the capacity problem. See, that's one of the 3 problems. Now it's like, oh, we've got a new problem to solve for to be able to scale. Now suddenly we need more leads to be able to have enough humans to fill this program, because what used to be a one-on-one, you only need one human at a time. We now, let's say you have 10 spots to fill, right? We have a leads, a traffic, that is the issue to solve for, because you need enough humans to be able to fill this new capacity that you opened up, and you're going to need that at a larger volume. And so this isn't like, oh, you can't scale, this isn't a problem, but this is helping you see and identify which of the problems, challenges, opportunities you have, so that you can identify what is the right thing to focus on. Because if what you need to focus on, the right opportunity to focus on your business is leads, but you're focusing on capacity and you're creating more and more offers, like you can create all the offers you want in the world, but if we don't have enough leads coming through the door, right, like that, you're not scaling. You just have created a lot of work for yourself to make like landing pages and offers, right? Like that's no longer the issue. We want to address the right opportunity, the right problem, right gap to close. So I'm hoping you're seeing that, like, as you address one, usually another one will become now the new thing to focus on. So leads, I think that is I think that's pretty obvious and that makes sense, but leads would be the second one there. And again, if you have questions, just throw them at me. And then the third one is conversions. So I would say capacity. These are opportunities to scale, problems to solve. We've got capacity, we've got leads, and we've got conversion. So first you have to solve for your capacity. And then if you have capacity, you need to have enough people coming through the door. If you have enough people coming through the door, right? And so you've got the container, you've got the capacity, you've expanded that, whether that's your personal capacity, your team capacity, an offer capacity. Then you didn't have leads, you brought leads. You did your work, like you focus on that opportunity. Got a bunch of leads coming through the door. Now, the next opportunity, the next thing to look at is how do you increase conversion? So, excuse me. I had like a weird hiccup. That was funny. Like a single hiccup. Conversions. So, I think this makes sense, but I think we can see how we want to solve for the right challenge or the right opportunity. So if you now have tons of leads coming and you're bringing them to something, you have that capacity, you have that offer that is scalable for you. Now your opportunity that's going to help you to scale is really focusing on conversions. And that then becomes a bigger thing to look at in terms of, are you converting at the rate you want to? If not, why is that? Is it because of messaging? Is it because of the way the offer is positioned? Is it because of something with your mindset coming up? Is it because of something more to do with the sales process, right? Like then we can get a little more nitty gritty with what is the more micro opportunity to lean into and to address. But first we need to identify what is the macro challenge, problem, opportunity to solve for. Or you might be finding you're having great conversions, right? Conversions are happening. And then it might be more about how do we increase that conversion percentage? Because if you're doing something to scale and that is your goal, right? Depending on all of your offers want to increase conversions, but then we might want to look at where are those opportunities to increase that a little bit, because that, especially if you're doing something at scale, could exponentially increase your revenue over time. And then we repeat the cycle. So then as your conversions increase and your programs are filling, you might then have a capacity issue again. And then as you solve the capacity issue, you might have a leads issue again, right? We just kind of cycle through this. But I want your brain to see this so that it's very simple, because I think otherwise it's very easy to either think you have a scaling problem when really it's not that you even have a scaling problem. It's that your business isn't in a place to scale, because you probably don't have a capacity problem. You probably have a leads or conversions problem for filling your first initial capacity. And even with that, I think if you're growing your business to your first 6 figures, there can absolutely be a personal capacity problem or a capacity opportunity to address, especially if you're working another job or something like that. But then you're focusing on the right thing. I have a client right now who's growing her business, and her challenge absolutely is capacity. She's growing to her first 6 figures. And we talk about this a lot because it would be so crazy making for her if we know that's what we need to address is her personal capacity. But instead we were focused on conversions or on bringing more leads through the door where she doesn't even have the capacity to hold them or to serve them. We would literally be solving the wrong problem or creating the wrong opportunity and making things worse, right? You have to think about that. If her opportunity or her challenge or her problem, whatever we want to call it, is she doesn't have enough capacity. We need to create more capacity. And we focus instead on bringing in more leads. So we're bringing in a ton more people, and she already doesn't have the capacity to serve like people who are coming through the door. Can you see how it would be so easy for the brain to say, but like a good business owner is focus on leads, and they're bringing in a bunch of leads, and like that's what we focus on, and like get more leads, get more visible. And then how actually that would just create a bigger problem, because if we burn her out, or if she can't serve people well, or if she can't do anything with those leads, right, that's just a bunch of wasted time and expenditure, and if anything could cause more harm to her business because she can't serve the clients in front of her or can't take care of herself to sustain what she's currently got going in her business. Hopefully that makes sense of why this is so important to address, and why I think being able to understand how easy it is to create problems that don't exist happens, because you can also see, if we use this client as an example, how if you're in the online space, if you're this client with a capacity challenge, how easy it would be to hear someone talking about, like, here are the 3 things you need to do to bring in more leads. If you're not getting this many of leads per week, you're doing something wrong in your business. And I scaled my business to $1 million or whatever it was by having X number of leads through this funnel every single day or every single week. And if you're not doing that, you're effing things up, right? To be like, oh my gosh, like I'm not doing that, right? And to go and try to implement that lead generation strategy when that's literally would be the wrong thing to focus on. Not that that isn't a valid strategy, not that that isn't something that worked for someone else, not that that isn't something that's important, but it would be actually the very thing that could be detrimental if your challenge, your current opportunity is capacity, right? That could be the very thing that breaks your business. And this is why I think not knowing, creating problems that don't exist, but also not knowing the right problem to solve or the right gap to close or the right opportunity to lean into is the biggest deal in business. It is the biggest reason I think business owners get stuck or get in their own way or get really, really frustrated. I mean, there's lots of reasons for that, but I think that's definitely one of the biggest. So I think this is also why it's really, as you're seeing this, where it's like when we're talking about conversions or even with leads, we can see where things like, of course, messaging matters. Of course, your marketing matters. Of course, your sales process matters. Of course, understanding how to think like a CEO and being in that role matters and is going to impact your ability to scale. But we can also see how you could have the world's best messaging, and if you don't have capacity, right, it's not a messaging problem. You can also have the worst messaging, but if you have a capacity problem, it still doesn't matter if you're focused on on your messaging, when really what we need to solve for is your capacity. And they can pin you over the head with that, but I'm hoping that this really makes sense, because I think otherwise, again, it's just so easy to hear. Look, I know I talk about messaging being so important, or sales process being so important, because they are, or your mindset, and they are so important. But I want to really invite you, whether you're going to your first 6 figures or scaling to multi 6, 7 figures, to really keep checking back in with your own business. This is part of being a CEO and that CEO role, and really discerning, is this the right problem at this stage of my business that I need to address, or is there something else my business currently needs me to focus on? Because it is very easy to create a problem as well. Okay, let me just see if there's anything else I want to share with that part, because I want to talk about capacity a little bit more, because we are talking about it. Let's see. Oh no, okay, there we go. The internet did a weird thing. We've been talking about capacity as an overarching thing. So we've been talking about the three main challenges to scale and to address the right one. So we've got, again, the capacity, we've got leads, we've got conversions. And I want to talk a little bit more about capacity, because just some of the nuances with capacity, because I think scaling is a solution to capacity. And I think one of the things that keeps people stuck at 10K to 20K months is often capacity. But even I have a client who is, I think they're at about 700K this year. Last year they grew to 500K. So they've still scaled their business this year. But one of our forever conversation that we're returning to, their biggest challenge in business is capacity. And it is what we're always returning to. And it is also the thing that keeps them from scaling faster, or from growing overall. And I say this because what they often think is that their biggest challenge is leads or conversions, right? They vacillate between the two. And one of the biggest conversations we're often having is some form of me saying, you do not have a problem booking clients. That is literally not the thing you need to solve for. You have more leads and more potential clients coming to you than you can handle, that you can even get onto a call with. And I know there's going to be someone listening to this who's in the phase of getting to those first 10K months that is going to hear that and want to flip me the fucking bird and be like, Kim, that does not sound like a problem. That sounds like a really great problem to have. And it is, but it's still a challenge. It is still a challenge in business, and it is, I think, a slippery slope in business, because one of the things we talk about a lot, and I think this is why capacity is nuanced, and I want to speak to some of these nuances here, because it's not always just, do you have a program to put people into scale? It's all of these. It's also sometimes those programs are filled, your offers are filled. It doesn't make sense for you to make another offer, and your brain, because you have scarcity, or because you're in fear, or because you're still operating from the you of 2 years ago that was making a different kind of money or was running a different business, because you're not necessarily thinking like a CEO and operating from fear or people pleasing or scarcity or a lack of boundaries, right? From any of these intertwined places that can come up, you can have a very big capacity problem. And again, it can sound like, oh, that's such a good problem to have. I have more leads and more potential clients and people who want to work with me than I could ever need. But if you're not addressing that and solving that, a number of quite negative consequences can happen. And I use that word so lightly because I never want to be someone who's just like, here are the consequences and here are all the bad things that can happen. And I know with this client in particular, and I have a couple of clients this comes up for, so if you're one of my clients watching this, I'm not singling you out. This is I think this is, again, the most prevalent thing for business owners as they're at this stage of multi 6 figures and scaling. I would say this is the problem. it flip-flops. I have some clients where it's leads and conversions, but this is a really big one, especially for those of you who have a little bit of that hardworking story, or have a little bit of that I'm not good enough patterning that can come up, or a little bit of the scarcity thing that can come up. And what I can see happen if you don't take capacity seriously, and you don't see it seriously as something to address, a couple things can happen, right? So you can overbook yourself, and overbooking yourself sounds so darn sexy. I overbooked myself in 2020, right? And I think it's something we can be like, I'm overbooked, like almost like oh, but it's actually a problem in business. Like, it's actually something that needs to be addressed. I accidentally overbooked myself because I had more people renew than I expected at that season. It was COVID like time, and I think I got fully booked maybe 2 years ago. But anyway, I had far more people renew, plus I just booked a bunch of clients, and so I had a season where I had 29 one-on-one clients. And again, that sounds like such a great problem to have, but that was a real challenge. Like, that was an actual challenge I needed to address, because all of those people were paying me very real money. It was very important to me to serve them to my fullest, and to give every single person the attention they were paying for and deserved, and to have the bandwidth to do so, which meant other parts of my business suffered, which meant my personal life, it was COVID, so it was fine. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of personal life happening, which is, I think, why that was probably a little bit more okay that happened. But that was a real thing to address and to solve for. And if I had just let that be okay, I'd be like, well, this is a great problem to have, and I'm making more money, and who cares? I can imagine that if I had allowed that to continue, I might have gotten burnt out. I might have decided I hated one-on-one, which is like the thing I love, and the thing I'm the best at, and the thing that is literally my whole business and where my revenue comes from. I might have started dropping a lot of balls. I have been on the receiving side of a client from people who are past capacity and who've taken me on as a client, and who I don't think it's any fault of theirs. I think it just happens. Things get dropped and mistakes happen, and that can cost you clients. It can cost you word of mouth referrals. It can cost you quality of delivery. I think capacity is actually, when we think about it, overbooking yourself can be quite a challenge. And so I talk with clients about this quite a bit, because what I see for my clients who are at that stage, who struggle with capacity, sometimes it's simply like in my case, like, oh, that was sort of an accident. Like, I didn't really, like, that's fine, and we can address this. And yes, people are in 6-month contracts, but I also just really intentionally slowed down. Like, I didn't offer free calls for a long time. Like, we weren't bringing in a lot of new people. We just slowed down a lot of, I did not have a leads then and conversions challenge to solve for. I had the capacity challenge to solve for. And that was a great example of, like, so I didn't do as much to bring in a bunch of leads and conversions because I didn't have space to put people there, but I also didn't have space and bandwidth to focus on lead generation and conversions and what that would mean in my business. I will say I've seen the trickle out effect of that, where things like content creation and some of our conversion events, when I finally when I created more capacity, there were a lot of things there where I'm like, oh wow, we have just been sort of like phoning certain things in here, which is fine. That was part of the solution because I had so many clients I needed to serve. But there were certain things where it's like, oh, there is actually an opportunity to lean into certain things that, had that not been a challenge, would have been focused on regularly in our business, if that makes sense. And so I think this is, again, like, I think overbooking yourself can seem like a great thing. I think there was a time when I was in my mastermind, one of my mastermind sisters had like an affirmation that she was overbooked. I was like, that's a great affirmation. I might have actually used that during COVID, so be careful what you wish for. But I really see now how like that's a capacity challenge. The reason I share that though is because I do think sometimes a capacity challenge opportunity is very mindset related. It's what we were talking about. I know for some of my clients, because there is a fear that they're going to run out of clients, because there's a fear that someone's not going to pay them, because there's a fear clients are going to go away, because there could be a fear that they won't make enough money, because fill in the, like, usually it's some sort of fear, some sort of scarcity, or if they don't feel like they're good enough, or if they feel like they have to really work hard to prove that they're good enough, right? Some of these normal, common human things that come up. Sometimes what this can manifest as then is is a belief that, like we were speaking about earlier, that there's a leads and conversions issue, and not seeing that there's a capacity issue, and overbooking themselves as a safety mechanism, essentially, because I think of it a little bit like it's almost like binge eating, and in that way of when someone binges because they're in a little bit of food scarcity, right? Like I think then sometimes you can binge, or if I want to be mindful of like where I take this conversation, but I think of it a little bit in that way, where the overbooking themselves is their coping mechanism. It's what feels in air quotes safe to them, because then if they have excess, right, like then if someone goes away, they still have enough clients. Then if someone doesn't pay them, they still have enough money coming through the door. Then instead of actually getting a break and allowing themselves to create something that is more scalable, right, they're just stuck in like it can become a bit of a sabotage to avoid focusing on what will allow them to scale. They're just stuck in the kind of hustle grind mode. Then they can feel good enough because they're working really hard. I think oftentimes it's also, excuse me, I've got all sorts of like sniffles, colds. I don't know what's going on with me, guys. It's like maybe there's allergies outside. That weird hiccup thing, and now my so strange. Anyway, don't mind me with my human snorting and noises here. But I think the other thing that can happen is if you want to scale, oftentimes you do have to create capacity first. And oftentimes that might look like momentarily saying no to some revenue, saying no to some clients, saying no to some things to create the space and capacity to either allow yourself the CEO time and brain space to be able to create something new, or to allow the brain space to hire someone new, to train a new team member, right? A lot of times it's not really a contraction before the expansion, but it is some capacity needs to be created before you can fill it, right? Like money, success loves a container. And if you are full to the brim, there's no room for anything new to come in. And that includes new ideas. That includes new containers you're creating. That includes new team members. And because of that, and because there might be a temporary, like we've got to create a vacuum before you can fill it, I think that can create quite a lot of uncertainty and fear for business owners as well. And I'm sharing this with you because I think the mind thinks that when you get to a certain level of business, when you make a certain level of money, you're not worried about that anymore. You're like, well, if I'm making $500,000 a year, like I wouldn't care about that. But I think a couple things are true. I think your patterns are your patterns. They don't necessarily go away. You tend to work through them and stabilize with whatever your level at, and then when you up level, they tend to resurface and you kind of have to work through them all over again. More money tends to just amplify what's already there. And I also find generally how you build something is how you sustain it. So if you built your business with a lot of fear, with a lot of scarcity, with a lot of insecurity, right, that is the fuel that is driving your business. But the other thing that's also true is generally as you're making more money, as you're holding more humans, your business expenses increase, your life expenses can increase, your responsibilities as a human often increase. And so I think, yes, if you're making $500,000, in theory, I think for most business owners, they can afford to create a little capacity. But because of those additional responsibilities, I think that can often kick up that fear for people, which is why this becomes such a conversation with my clients and why it's something I'm really harping on here, because I think it's just so easy to overlook or so easy to think, oh, I have a capacity problem. The thing I need to do is create a new offer to put humans into, when sometimes it's, oh, I have a capacity problem because I feel deep fear, deep scarcity, because I'm people pleasing, because I feel like I need to say yes to every single opportunity and I can't leave money on the table, or I can't say no to anything, or I can't say no to any humans, and I can't have any boundaries because then I won't make enough money. Then that means with that capacity problem, really what we need to address are things like the people pleasing or the boundaries or the feeling safe, right? There's something deeper that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, sure, you might create another program and that might momentarily solve this, but you're just going to recreate more of the same in that other container. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense with what I'm saying there. So overbooking yourself is, I think, again, it can be sort of an accidental thing, but I think sometimes it can also be light on the dashboard that might say, hey, is there something else? Like, what's the thing under the thing? Is there something else coming up for you here that might need some love, that might need some support, that we might want to take a look at? Because that's probably the first thing we want to take a look at. I think with overbooking yourself as well with the capacity issue, the thing I'll often say to clients, and that I will remind them, is we want to be so mindful of that as well, because if you're constantly overbooking yourself, you're also really perpetuating the story that you always have to hustle more, that you always have to work more, that that's the way you're going to make more money, or that that's the way you're safe, or that that's the way you're going to make enough money. And literally, if we're thinking about scaling, yes, I do, for those of you going from 0 to 6 figures, or even maybe 0 to like 200K, I do think to a certain degree, right, there is work involved, there is some healthy hustle involved. I'm not going to be the person who tells you that that isn't true. I just frankly think businesses do require work and effort, and you have to deliver a product, you have to market, you have to sell. Like, there are just actual, I don't think there is really a true virtual, like a passive revenue product, unless we're maybe talking about investing in the stock market, or what I think about with revenue share. But I digress. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole there. But there is work involved. But if you're at the place in business where you do have a true capacity problem and it is time to scale, right? Scaling, what that means is you're at a place in business where you can no longer keep working harder or keep working more and make more money, right? You are hitting the ceiling of that capacity in your business. And we want to, and that can be fine too, right? Some businesses, like, that is the business, and that can be okay. Not every business needs to be a scalable business, but if you're desiring to scale and you're trying to solve for that by always overbooking yourself, you're not really scaling. You're really more perpetuating a belief or story that you always have to work harder and harder and harder to make more money. And that's something we want to be mindful of to unwind. And again, that does not mean that there is not actual work and time and effort and thought involved in growing a business or in scaling a business, right? Scaling your business and making more revenue absolutely still requires work and effort. It just might look different, right? It's often about working smarter, not harder. It's about creating different capacities, it's about creating offers that are scalable. And it often is also about leveraging your resources so that you're investing in things like team and support and automations and other things that can support you. So you're not the person who always has to do the work, but something in your business needs to. And with that, I will just keep circling back to, and then I've got one other thought here before we wrap up, is really remembering that if you want to scale, if you're in the place where it's time to scale, you need the capacity first. You're not going to scale first and then create the capacity. You need the capacity to fill, right? If this is like such a silly example, but if you had a jar and it was empty, right, you could fill it with money. If you had a jar that was full with money and you wanted more money to carry around, right, you would need to go spend some of that money. You would need to reallocate some of that money. You would need to create some capacity in that jar to have more money. And so if your jar was filled with $1 bills and you're like, I want to fill it with $100 bills, first we got to get out some of those $1 bills so there's room to fill it with $100 bills. Silly example, but that's a little bit what we're talking about here. I have two things I'm just looking at the time here. I have a note here that capacity is also a very big boundaries and people pleasing thing, but that could be almost a whole nother live stream conversation. So I might circle back to it, but that's just such, again, a conversation I'm having with clients. And I reflect that because I think, again, I want you to keep looking at what is the actual opportunity for you if you want to scale or grow your business. But when we're looking at capacity, when we're looking at leads, when we're looking at conversions, really being honest with yourself about what is really the thing that needs to be addressed. Because I'll just talk about this really briefly. If it's capacity, a lot of times capacity will be an issue if you're not holding boundaries, right? If you're leaking all over your boundaries, if you're saying yes to everyone, if you don't have boundaries with clients, if you don't have boundaries with team, if you don't have boundaries with yourself or the people in your personal life, if you're people pleasing all over the place, if you're over delivering from a place of people pleasing, not because that feels really good to do as a part of how you show up for your work, if you're saying yes to opportunities where you really need to say no, right? These are all boundaries issues, people-pleasing issues, I think are part of boundaries in many ways, and that will limit your capacity to scale so much, because you can see how if you don't have boundaries, that will impact your capacity very quickly and fill up your capacity. And if you don't have capacity, right, we can't look at leads and conversions because there's no room in the container for you to scale, which is why boundaries don't sound super sexy. They don't sound like they have a whole lot to do with money. They don't sound like they have a whole lot to do with scaling, but holy moly, I would say boundaries are like, it's huge. And boundaries, I think, just a side note here, and then I will jump to the other thing. I think with boundaries too, and y'all tell me if you find this to be true, I feel like boundaries are one of those topics in our personal development space where it's sort of like, if you're good at personal development, if you're a good coach, you have great strong boundaries, and it's never something you look at. And I just want to give everybody a little bit more grace, where I think it's just remembering that you can be great at boundaries and still struggle with them sometimes, or still feel prickly around them, or still need support with them, or still notice areas where it's like, oh, this is an area in my business where there aren't strong boundaries, or I need to tighten those boundaries up, or I need to revisit those boundaries, or things have changed dramatically, and what once felt good when I had a handful of clients, and now that I'm overbooked, right, doesn't feel good. I need to relook at those boundaries. So I think just remembering that, because I think otherwise it's just, again, a place that, I think the online space, I think we just love to shame ourselves, and I just don't think that's beneficial at all. The other piece with capacity that I want to touch on, so we've been talking about capacity more in terms of your personal capacity, literally your capacity in your business in terms of clients, but I think also your personal capacity in terms of your bandwidth, your mental space. If you don't have, I call it CEO time, white space, personal time to think, whatever you want to call that. If you don't have that capacity, it is very challenging to have the bandwidth to think of an offer to scale, to build the offer to scale, to market the offer to scale, right? All of the things, your business to scale. That's why capacity is such a big thing. And so I think, well, we didn't talk about that too much, but I do think I know for me, capacity is probably one of the bigger challenges for me, especially as a one-on-one business owner, and I'm starting to create something new for you. And one of the things I'm really having to look at with my schedule, the reason you'll probably not hear about this until probably spring, summer of next year, is I have to be very honest with my capacity and bandwidth, and no, my one-on-one clients are my number one focus. They are my baby. They get my attention. What I'm currently doing, you all hear, right? Like, this is my number one focus, and I need to be very mindful of my capacity, especially since I'm someone who tends to have a large capacity and loves to create things. So I'm being very strict with the amount of time I'm opening up to create what I will share with you probably in the new year. And I'm carving out time for white space thinking time and for creation time, but I have to be very intentional and be very mindful that I am creating capacity for this, but not so much capacity that it is going to be detrimental to what I'm currently running. And so that's what I mean here. It's like, that's not a problem. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I didn't do that, and I didn't look at that, and I didn't address that, and I didn't see that is a very real thing for me to address, it would be very easy for someone who loves to create and get very tunnel vision focus on things to focus a whole lot of time on this other project at the detriment of what is also very important to me that requires quite a bit of capacity and mental brain space, or to drop balls over here, or to not create enough time and space to actually think through things. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent a little bit, but just that's more the personal capacity piece. And that's where we're talking about, you need capacity. Sometimes you have to open up capacity before you can fill it. But the third thing here with capacity, and I think this is also something that I, again, to see as such a big part of setting yourself up to scale. And I think our brains often just think it's like, go get more leads, go get more conversions, just go sell a bunch of master classes or open a big group program. And yes, of course, you need to have a scalable business model and offer, and that is part of it. But the infrastructure, the capacity on the back end of your business is so crucial and so a part of sustainably scaling and being able to not just scale and sell something once, but actually do so over and over again. I think I've shared this with you before, but I have purchased things from people who were scaling and never received them before. And that to me is an indication of a capacity problem, and that there isn't an infrastructure on the back end with systems, processes, and team, and probably CEO time as well for all of that. That is to me someone who is chasing leads and conversions, and when there is a capacity issue that needs to be solved for first. And I think that is also a challenge for business owners. We talk about this in so many different ways, but I think when you are trying to do everything all yourself, when you are trying to wear all the hats in your business, that I think can really crunch your capacity. And let me frame this another way. When you're ready to scale, I think the reason this is a mindfuck, and I know we've talked about this, there's an old live stream, and maybe I'll find it and bring it up here. But I think why this is a mindfuck and why this particular form of capacity can be challenging is usually what gets you from 0 to 6 figures is a little bit of wearing all of the hats. It is a little bit of filling your capacity. It is a little bit of being both in your zone of genius and your zone of excellence and your zone of competence, using Gay Hendricks terms. And when you are ready to scale, let's say you're at 6 figures, or maybe you're at the 200K mark, right? And you're looking to really scale and expand. I mean, I think you'd be doing this beforehand. What happens is capacity is an issue to solve for, right? Scaling is a solution to capacity. And what we want to start looking at, part of what we're looking at with capacity, is how do you as the CEO continually look at, okay, your business still needs zone of competence, zone of excellence, zone of genius task work done. And by that I mean zone of genius is what only you can do, what you do best. It's probably what people pay you for. Zone of excellence is what you can do really, really well. It's like, there's a lot in my business. Sometimes I tinker in Canva and I shouldn't, right? Like that's probably a zone of excellence. It's probably a zone of competence thing, but we'll call it a zone of excellence. It's things you can do that don't need to be done by you, but you do them really well. You could probably get paid for them. And zone of competence are the things you can just do, but probably you shouldn't get paid for. And those are usually the easiest things to outsource or to automate or to delegate. When you're growing from 0 to 6 figures, when you're going from 0 to 10K months, when you're growing your business, again, often you are wearing all of those hats, and that's doing it right, I would say. It doesn't always make sense for you at that stage to outsource all of that out. And for some businesses it does, and it depends on your resource. That's a whole nother conversation. But as you're scaling, as you're ready to scale, again, suddenly we've got a capacity issue. What we're also looking at is how can we have you as the CEO have the majority of your capacity, the majority of your time, your thinking time, your serving time, your showing up for the business time in your zone of genius, and keep minimizing your zone of excellence and delegating, automating, systematizing, right, your zone of competence. And that is something you're continually looking at. And ideally, as you scale, right, your zone of genius, it's almost like you get more and more narrowed in that, and more things that maybe previously you thought were in your zone of genius might even go into your zone of excellence. Like, we want to keep pushing things down into zone of excellence, zone of competence. Like, that is your goal as you're scaling. And I think this is where a lot of business owners can have a capacity challenge or hit a capacity roadblock, because there is a little bit of that. But this is what got me here. Why would I let go of? Why would I stop doing? Why would I delegate out the very thing that got me to this stage? And I think for most of you in this group, you kind of already know the answer to that, but it's what got you here won't get you to where you want to go next. If you have a capacity challenge, right? It's, again, what is the right problem to solve for? When you're starting your business and you have 0 clients, or you have 1 client, or you have 3 clients, right? You probably don't have a capacity issue, and you probably have more time than money, and you probably have more capacity, and you probably have more resources, and it makes sense for you to be in some of these things. Again, as you get ready to scale, suddenly we have a capacity problem. It literally doesn't make sense for you to be doing the same things, but those things did get you results. And I think this is where it becomes a mindfuck. What got you here won't get you to where you want to go next, meaning you don't need to do the same things, meaning you as a person need to step into being the next level CEO version of yourself. That doesn't mean those actual tasks and roles don't need to stay in your business. It just means you specifically might no longer be the person who needs to do them if the challenge to solve for, if the opportunity is capacity, right? And I think that's where people get it screwy, because they think they're going to have to let go of something or stop doing something, or it's not going to be as good. And I think this is the place where it's like, no, those things are still going to happen in your business. They still need to happen in your business. They probably are really beneficial. They probably will allow you to continue to scale. They just no longer need to be done by you. And so this is why a lot of the conversations I'm having with clients who are scaling is capacity, and it's capacity through all these different lenses, right? It's capacity with their offers. It's capacity with their rosters, like literal seats or literal seats within their offers. It's their personal capacity. It is their, I would say this is more like back end capacity in terms of, do we need to, it's team and it's systems and processes. And a lot of times, especially if you grow quickly, right? Like these are just things where even if you have team support, you might not have the systems and processes in place. This then becomes the challenge to solve for. And the reason we want to solve for this first, again, is if we're not solving for this and instead you're like, but I've got a leads problem and I need to go get more leads, and you have a bunch of people come through the door, right? This is when you're selling a whole bunch. You're getting the leads, getting the conversions, you're making the money, right? But you're not able to deliver effectively on the back end. Either people literally aren't getting the offers, like I mentioned, or they're getting half-assed offers, or balls are being dropped, or it's poor service, or you get so fried and burned out that you just decide to burn down a segment of your business. We have seen that in the online space. It is wild to me. I've been in the online space for 10 years. I did a coach training program for a while, for a year, and then I worked in advertising before I started my business. And so I've been in the online space for about 10 years. I've been in business for 7.5 years. It is wild to me to see how many people have scaled to $1 million through that time, who I do not see anymore, who have like literally gone off the grid, who have closed down their businesses, who are like doing something completely different. And look, there's lots of reasons for that. I think sometimes that's just a natural evolution, like permission for all of us to create success and to decide we want to do something different, or to have that open up opportunities somewhere else. Like I think that's beautiful. And I think some of the reason, and I know some of the reason behind closed doors, is because people get burnt out, or because people have they've focused on leads and conversions instead of capacity, right? And they don't have the capacity to be able to hold the leads and conversions coming through the door, and it's just not sustainable. And either they have a lot of issues to deal with on the back, it's like everything is duct taped on the back end, or they're just miserable trying to hold everything up, which is why this is so important. I think in some ways, leads and conversions, I know for those of you who feel like that is challenging, you're gonna be like, Kim, fuck you. Because I was about to say, I think those are almost like the easier things to solve for. I think capacity is sometimes the more challenging one to dig into, because I think there just are so many nuances and layers, and there's a lot of mindset here, but there's also a lot of like team dynamics and just like real CEO level shit that is not always what I think when you first come into business is what you think you're going to be focusing on. So I would say with this piece, it's really just understanding this so that, again, you can keep coming back to what is the right opportunity if you're ready to scale for you to focus on. And then once you focus on one, knowing that another one might be something you want to look at. That doesn't mean if you focus on capacity, you're never going to need to focus on bringing in leads, or you're never going to need to focus on conversions or increasing conversions. It's just knowing at any given time in your business what needs to be addressed first, because there's only so much of you. There's only so much capacity you literally have and bandwidth to have around that. Seeing here. Okay, no questions. The allergy thing is kicking up though. This is so wild. If I sound very congested, that is why. With last piece here, I just had the notes here. So I think just with the capacity we're talking about in terms of being in your zone of genius, I think just the reminder with all of this is with scaling too, and with capacity, is remembering it's just not always about adding on more offers. And if you want to go from 10K months to 20K months, or from 20K months to 50K months, or from 50K months to 100K months, yes, sometimes it is about adding on another offer. Sometimes it's about raising your rate. Sometimes it's about having a different payment structure, right? I use revenue share, right? It's not about creating another offer or opening up more spots. That's how we scale. It is about having a scalable offer, but sometimes the reason you're stuck at 10K months and not jumping to 20, or 20 and not jumping to 50, whatever that is, sometimes it is the scalable offer, right? And that's something we want to look at. which is part of the capacity thing we're talking about. But sometimes it is the capacity thing in terms of sometimes it's shutting down offers, right? It's because you're spread too thin and you have too many offers and you need to go all in on one. Sometimes it's about saying no to things. Sometimes it is about delegating. So I think just really understanding that again, because otherwise I think it's just so easy in our online space that is just loves to hype everything up to either have you focus on solving the wrong problem, have you create a problem that doesn't exist, or have you building a path to scale that is frankly so unsustainable and that doesn't have the foundation and infrastructure to support it. And that's not what I want for you. I want you to, yes, scale your business. I want you to scale, whether it's scaling to 6 figures or scaling to multi-six or $1 million. I want you to do so in a way that feels like you have a solid footing under you and that you have built something that can stand, yes, a year, but like we're talking like I want to be in business for decades, right? Until y'all say I'm too old to be up and on live streams and coaching, right? I hope that that's how long my business lasts, and that's how long I want to be in this business and show up for this business. It might have variations that change over the time, but that's what I want for you. And that happens when you're identifying these pieces and addressing the right one at the right time. And when you really treat capacity as a very real and important part of your business, and something to really pay attention to. So that is what I've got for you. I hope that was beneficial. I'm just seeing here now. Okay. Hope that was beneficial. I hope it was helpful for you. If you have questions, if you're watching the replay, drop them for me. I always love hearing from you. Don't forget, we will grab the winner from that giveaway at the end of tonight, probably, if there's any of you who still want to put in an entry there. And then if you're listening to this and you know you're in a place where you either want to grow your business through those first 10K months and to have it become really consistent so you're making that reoccurring revenue, because I think that is like that is step one in business, and that is, I think, the hardest phase in business, because I was just talking about this with someone today. There are so many pieces of the foundation, not an overwhelming, like I think it can be very simple, but there are so many pieces you're building for the first time and you really do want that solid foundation. And I think it changes everything, right? When you have that whole foundation built and you know how to create that consistency with your revenue. If that's you, or if you're at the place where you're like, I've been coasting, right? We've been making some recurring revenue, but I'm ready to scale, and I'm just noticing like I need some support with that, whether that's looking at the capacity, whether that's figuring out the scalable offer, whether that is looking more at the team and back end side of things, or some of my boundaries and the mindset side of things, or if that's more on the leads and the conversion side of things. I just know that that's where I'm at, because I'm ready to make 2024 the year that we double this business revenue or triple it or whatever that looks like for you. I would love to connect with you. I work with clients on both, like 0 to building that foundation, going as far as 6 figures, or from the 6-figure scaling to multi-6 and 7 figures. And I sincerely love both sides. I know one of my clients who's newer to business was like worried to book a call with me because she was worried that she was too early in business and that wouldn't be fun for me. I sincerely love the conversations I have with my client who's on track for $1 million this year, as much as the clients of mine who are building their foundation and they're newer to business. Like I love both. And I personally love when I get the client who's on track for $1 million this year. We've been working together since they were either making $0 or like $1,000 a month. So I also love being on the journey with you the whole way through. So either place, don't feel like either way, like if you're new to business, like you're too new for me. I would love to connect with you. I am opening up we have a coaching intensive still available in December, and then we're looking at ongoing coaching spots. We have some availabilities opening up in the new year. So if that is you, if you would love to find out what that would look like in terms of working together, whether it's in a coaching intensive, we also have the VIP in-person days, and we can do those virtually as well, or my ongoing coaching partnership. I will drop a discovery call link below here after we hop off. I always say that, well, I don't know if actually I always say this. Fit is really, really important to me with clients. It is one of my top values. I preach right fit leads and clients, and not just because I think that's fun language. It's because it is just such a core value, especially doing one-on-one work, and because so many of my clients renew and work with me for years. I've had clients with me for 4 years, right, from 0 to $1 million for quite some time. So please take me up on that call if you're even thinking about this. I promise you, if you are not a fit, and by not a fit, I don't mean like we don't like each other, but just in terms of, am I the right person in terms of coaching chemistry and in terms of the challenges, the problems you're specifically needing to work on in your business? If that's not me, and for whatever reason, I just told someone last week that I thought they were great and that they shouldn't hire me. I will tell you that very transparently, and if I know someone who is a good fit for you, I will very happily refer you out. I'm referring someone out today, just as evidence there, because that is so important to me. So don't worry about that if that's something that you're worried about. I promise that is super important to me. But that also does mean, because I know someone reached out recently and asked if we could skip the discovery call process, that does mean I do require a call of some sort at this stage. I might change that in the future. We might move to application only process, but at this stage, because that is so important to me right now, it feels really good for me to offer calls. So I do require a discovery call or one of my free coaching sessions. So I will drop that link for you. I would love to connect with you. I would love to support you. I would love to support you to make 2024 your best year yet, whether it's your first 6-figure year or your first 7-figure year. Nothing would make me happier. And then I will be back next week, and we will have another fun conversation as we start heading into the end of the year. Lots of love, y'all. Thanks for being here.